Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm Denisa Tova, your host, and I am here to introduce you to the one and only Larry Greenberg. Larry is not just any divorce lawyer, he's a superstar in New York City, helping everyone from celebrities to everyday professionals for over 30 years. And he's kind of a detective in a courtroom, even landing on the front page of the New York Post with the headline Sherlock Lawyer Nails Lying Husband. But he makes every effort to settle cases out of court as long as he can get the best result for the client and the client's family, but he does not hold back going to trial if necessary. And I know, he's not just a powerhouse lawyer. Larry's spending time with his wife and his teenage kids. So, Larry, we are so excited to get to know the man behind the legend. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Denisa, and thank you for referring referring to me as a man. My wife often refers to me as a child, but I do appreciate that description.
Yeah. And I should have mentioned he has amazing sense of humor. So this is going to be really fun. Larry, you are practically a legend in the lawyer world, and you are. Look, as far as the lawyering, you've mastered it over the last 30 years, from being a financial guru to savvy mediator, skilled negotiator, all with a sense of humor and grace. Now, if we were to ditch this sort of a courtroom persona for a bit and dive into your other territory, the iconic makeshift basement gym, complete with a vintage, I believe it was 1981 vibes. So let me say this. A couple of weeks ago, I caught you were just catching a breath post workout session. And as someone who appreciates a good weight lift myself, I'm dying to know, has your gym style evolved with age? Like, are you still chasing the hardcore gym vibe, or have you embraced sort of the nostalgic home gym? And what's the secret sauce for your workout regime these
Wow.
days?
I mean, talk about coming out of left field, Denisa. As a matrimonial lawyer, I was thinking you were going to be focused on some of the more mundane aspects of my practice. Um, but I guess this is about the people behind, um, the lawyers practicing matrimonial law. So, my sort of basement gym that we were talking about the other day stems largely from the fact that during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we all were kind of hunkering down and isolating in place, one of the things that I immediately noticed or realized I would have to address was, where do I work out? There was no more gym in my apartment building in the city, and I was out in Long Island in a house that my family and I enjoy. And so I like to refer to the gym as my Clubber Lang gym, vis-a-vis, Rocky 3, where Mr. T is working out in a very austere basement, without all the typical accoutrements of your fancy New York gym, and consisting largely of free weights and dumbbells and sort of a little more gritty type setup. And shockingly, despite not having all those beautiful cable machines and all those fancy ellipticals in my basement, I managed to not only maintain some degree of physical fitness, but I actually got into fantastic shape. And so I still kind of have continued that with my workouts, and which I also think in a weird way relate to the practice of law, because what I do, Denisa, and I'm sure many of our colleagues do as well, is very emotional and pressure filled. And so one of the greatest releases I have found from this practice, is working out and working out vigorously. So I do continue to work out. And I think it serves both a physical and a mental purpose, because it enables me to kind of release a lot of that emotional anxiety that is often caused by the practice, where there's a tremendous amount of stress and pressure to perform, and you have good people, probably at their worst, going through a very trying time. So that's sort of my story about why I started and continue to work out in somewhat of an aggressive way. See,
That's a
I
no.
don't know. I
That's
feel like
actually
maybe
really
I'm like
cool.
the Incredible Hulk. I'm going to burst out of the suit on the podcast.
So, so in your office there somewhere, do you have a meat hook with like a slab of beef that you're that you're
No,
training with like a
no, but
rookie?
but my
No.
associate, my associate would say that there are times that I treat my staff like slabs of beef with a meat hook, but it's really not the case.
You know, you are really an interesting person. And the reason why I'm saying that, because there's so many layers to you. You know, let's walk down the memory lane a little bit. You were quite the entrepreneurial spirit even as a teenager, and I mean, you set up a serious business. I believe it was at age 14, and I'm not talking about lemonade stand. Talk about that.
Well, it's true. I really don't know, Denisa, how I ended up as a divorce lawyer. And unlike a lot of people that grow up and say, I want to be an attorney, or even those who grow up saying, I want to be a family law attorney. When I was younger, that didn't even cross my mind. In fact, ironically, I was involved and interested in things that had nothing to do with the practice of law. I was very much into music, and I was very much into computers. And back in 1980, when I was about 14, I was the kid running around school saying, one day everyone is going to have a computer on their desk. And, all of the cool kids in school would look at me and say, Larry, those things are like CB radios. They're going to come and go. And your idea that someday everyone's going to have a computer on their desk is absurd. And, as a result, I was involved in the computer club, which of course qualified me as as a geek,
Yeah.
or a nerd. And I couldn't afford to buy a computer, a personal computer. Back then, I recall the computer I wanted was an Apple II. It was one of the first Apple products. And my mother, who was a music teacher in the elementary school, and my father, who was actually a lawyer for the federal government, we were, of modest middle class means. And so I'll never forget, my mom bribed me. She said if I sang in the temple choir, she would buy me a computer. And as I said, was very musical and came from a musical background. And so I got this computer, but back then they had tape drives, meaning every program you had to load with a cassette tape, like an audio tape recorder, if anyone even knows what that is anymore. And what I really, really wanted was a floppy disk drive. And I also wanted a printer, and I couldn't afford one. So what my friend and I did, my best friend Eddie, we called up a small company at the time called Epson, which is still in existence, and we pretended that we were a computer store. And we said, "Hi, this is we're opening a new computer store, and we'd like to set up an account." And the person on the other end of the phone, who was clearly an adult, I was 14, said, "Well, what's your sales tax resale number, and where is your store located?" And I kind of quickly held the phone, and I said to my friend Eddie, "What's a sales tax resale number?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "What's the name of our company?" And I said, "I don't know." And he had just moved to Port Washington from Roslyn. And he said, I knew he had moved to a place called Longwood Road. And out of my mouth, I blurted, "Longwood Computing. And our application for a sales tax resale number is pending." So they set up an account. Little did they know I was under the age of 18. And they said, "Well, our minimum order is $1,000, which at the time required us to order 3 printers. And Eddie and I had saved up some money, and we were each going to pay about $350 for a printer, but we didn't have enough money to pay for the third printer. So the guy on the other end of the phone said, "The minimum you can order is 3 printers." So I said, "Okay, order the printers." He said, "Well, they'll be COD," which for those of you who don't know, that means when UPS delivers it, you actually have to pay them in certified funds. So I gave them my home address, and a few weeks passed. And then one day, my father calls me. I hear the doorbell ring, and he goes, Larry. And I run downstairs and I go, what? He said, there's a guy at the front door who says he's looking for Longwood Computing and that he's owed $1,000. So suffice it to say, he was not happy with his 14-year-old son. And fortunately, he went upstairs. Back in those days, people sometimes kept cash on hand, and he paid the UPS driver the $1,050 in cash. I think he got it from his sock drawer. And he said, now what? And I said, don't worry, Dad. Eddie's going to pay me back the $350, and I'll try and sell one of the other printers to a kid in school. And that's how Longwood Computing was born. What happened was, along with those computers was a catalog of all sorts of different products that were sold by this local distributor, which included radar detectors, video games, blenders, microwave ovens, all at wholesale. So Eddie and I, we used our printers and we made up a little catalog. We went to school the next day and we started telling kids, if you give us a deposit for any of these products, we'll order the products and then we mark them up. And when we marked them up, we weren't marking them up by 30 or 40% like many retail establishments were. We were marking them up by $50 or $25 because at that age we were like, wow, that's a ton of money. Slowly but surely, over time, by the time we were seniors in high school, we had 800 telephone lines coming into my house in Long Island. We had a service that was taking orders, and all of a sudden, we were making money selling computers. Unfortunately, because we both decided we would go to college and get an education, ultimately, we ended up closing the business and going off to college.
What a story. Wow. And that was just one of your layers. You have a personal connection to music that has never stopped all the way through
Yeah,
college,
that
right?
absolutely. That, music is something that's always been a part of my family. My mother is a concert pianist. She went to Juilliard. Um, I grew up with music in the home. She was the local elementary school music teacher, which I might add she was highly overqualified to be. I was in chorus. I played in the band. I played the clarinet. I played a little saxophone. Um, and I was in some of the theater productions in high school. When I went to the University of Virginia, I was a member of a very prestigious singing group called the University of Virginia Men's Glee Club that toured throughout the United States with women's colleges. We would go to the women's colleges and join together, and we would sing all sorts of large art pieces, Handel's Messiah, Mozart's Requiem, all, pretty serious music. Um, when I was in law school, I sang with a couple of bands, more like classic rock and roll, which I've always enjoyed. Um, After law school, I was in a band called Unsuited. It was a three-piece acoustic trio where we all sang harmonies, very kind of American folk rock, America the band, Crosby, Stills and Nash. In about 2000, one of my friends asked me to join a band, which ultimately was called Three Guys and Larry, which was really a classic four-man rock and roll setup. I was, of course, Larry. Um, it was sort of a self-deprecating name to the band because the three guys were these big, masculine rock and rollers, and I was Larry, the kid who sang Broadway show tunes.
Larger than life.
Well, I don't know about larger than life, but suffice it to say, we didn't sing Broadway show tunes. I mean, these guys gave me, Zeppelin, The Who, Police, pretty much classic rock and roll. And, I did the best I could. We played out at a number of very well-known clubs throughout New York City. We haven't been doing it for 4 or 5 years now, but we played at some of New York City's more well-known rock and roll clubs, the Bitter End. We used to play at the Knitting Factory which used to, I
Well,
think, be in Tribeca. Kenny's Castaways. The real staples on Bleecker Street, the Village Underground. These were fairly legitimate, rock and roll
yeah.
clubs.
Yeah, no, that was more than just an interest. It sounded like a passion. Can you bust a little tune?
Oh no, I'm not. Please,
Yeah, and really, an FYI, I have absolutely no idea what you were walking into, right? But
there were
um,
bells on a hill, but I never heard them ringing. No, I never heard them at all till there was you. I mean, I had a decent
wow,
voice back in the day.
great.
Um, I still can carry a
You still
tune.
do.
My
Yeah.
son, my son plays the guitar. My daughter sings. I think music is a beautiful thing. It's a just like working out at the gym. It's another outlet for me, um, and it's a stress reducer. I'll never forget when I was studying for the bar exam. I had a piano in my apartment, and it was a one bedroom. It took up almost the entire living room. My grandmother had left it to me, beautiful Steinway, but it took up half my living room. And when I was studying for the bar, whenever I would start to study, before I began studying a large quantity of case material or coursework, I would play the piano and I would sing. And whether it's true or not, I always felt that kind of opened up my mind, and that music is such an important part of education, and I believe that to this day, that I think learning about music and singing or playing a musical instrument is such a beneficial thing, just in terms of like your intellectual function. I don't want to get too crunchy, but I really have always been a big advocate for music education and music being part of someone's education.
I love that. Yeah, I grew up, we didn't have a lot, but my mom, she signed my sister and I for guitar lessons and, learning a couple of foreign languages and living in different countries. You sort of, I think it adds another layer, another dimension to your mind. So that's, wow, that's really great. Switching gears. Let me ask you this. The essence of the podcast is to humanize the professionals, right? So they see each other as human beings outside of the courtroom, and to also improve the image of lawyers just in general. What do you think in your mind that would have to change, or it would take, to make that happen? You know, to start seeing each other as human beings outside of the courtroom.
Um, that's a great question. Uh, well, I think that there are different types of people that practice divorce law. Um, I think a common thread amongst those people, especially the ones that are really committed to it and find it fulfilling, is that they tend to be sensitive. Now, they also can at times be quite insensitive. But I think that the colleagues that I find most pleasant to work with are the ones that realize that we're here to do a job and we're representing people that are going through a very difficult time. And I find that the lawyers that don't realize that their adversary is also a human being, they they really they really are losing an important aspect of their profession. I think it's so much harder for me to resolve a case when I'm dealing with someone that just takes everything personally, and thinks that by being nasty, or unpleasant, or taking things personally, or acting as if they are the client, they're doing their clients a great disservice, because the ability to sort of objectively step back and realize that there's three sides to every story, and that the person on the other side of the table is just advocating their client's position, that's invaluable. So, what is it that would enable people out there who say, oh, I hate lawyers? You know, I'm not really sure. Maybe things like this, maybe more public forums where lawyers who might have reputations as being aggressive pit bulls in court, have the opportunity to show their softer and more sensitive side. Because I do think that most of my colleagues do have that side. And in fact, many of them go into this area of work because they are sensitive. And by being sensitive, they express empathy for their client, they can be supportive of their client, and then advocate for them zealously. But the problem is when they get too sensitive or too personally involved, and that can make the whole process go sideways. And that's when I run into colleagues of mine, who I would consider less savory, to use a euphemism.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Louder in a courtroom, elevating yourself, drama, being dramatic. Oftentimes, I say it's like it's almost like I don't want to say insecurity, but it's like you said, you bring the personal mind, like your stuff gets hit, and you sort of you express it outwardly, and sometimes you sort of you channel that through your client's emotions, and you take on those emotions, I should say. So it's wonderful to hear, you have so many different outlets, and not losing the sense of self, right? Because there's work, and then this is my personal life. um, if you were to step away, though, from legal career, and this may be an easy question, I was just thinking about that because you have so many interests. If you were to immerse yourself fully in another profession for a week, what would that be and why?
Um, well, would I automatically be successful, or there's no guarantee?
No guarantee.
That's a toughie. I might start auditioning for Broadway musicals
Mm,
because I think um, that that would be fulfilling, and it would enable me to sort of explore, those questions that many of us have as we are further down the road, at the age of 57. Um, a lot of people go into their area of, into their professions because they're trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. I'll never forget when I said to my father, when I decided after I graduated from college at the University of Virginia, I said, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, well, what do you think would be something you might be interested in? And I said, well, I'd like to stay in school so I don't have to get a real job. And I decided to go to law school. And then I got a job out of law school, and I would go and see my father, who's not with us anymore. And I would say, Dad, what, what if I don't want to do this when I'm older? And he said to me something that I never forget. He said, Larry, do the best you can at whatever it is you're doing while you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Now, when he said that to me, did I ever think that 30 years later I would be a divorce lawyer in New York City with 30 years of experience under my belt and a bunch of, landmark cases and big trials, and having had the opportunity to meet all sorts of, high net worth people and celebrities at times? No. But I guess it was good advice because I ended up building myself from a little, practice in downtown Brooklyn to, playing with the big dogs, so to speak, and fighting, and arguing and practicing law. So, um, but in the back of my mind, you know, I always wonder, what would have been had I explored or pursued a career, in the arts. And so I think that if I were going to have that week, I would start going on auditions, and who knows, Denisa, maybe
Mm.
if I got a part in a Broadway or off Broadway show, I might never come back here.
Well, I'll be watching you. It's very possible. And on a final note, so there's so much wisdom in what you're saying, and it's like you're growing, and through every enriching experience, and you probably will never stop. What advice would you give to incoming lawyers that you didn't receive yourself, that you had to learn on your own?
Um, well, I would say that, of course, try and surround yourself with people that you like or that you think you would grow to like, because I don't care what anyone says. If you're in an environment where you feel nurtured or treated kindly, um, you're going to be much more open to learning and growing. Um, and I will say my first job out of law school was with a pretty horrible boss, and having a horrible, mean, difficult employer, that was the worst thing. It made me just hate what I was doing every day. And so in fairly short order, I broke away from him. And even though I really wasn't very experienced, I started my own law practice and I began to surround myself with people that were kind and nurturing. And so I would say try and surround yourself with people you like, right? You don't have to like everyone, but try and surround yourself with people that you think you could be friends with or friendly with. And then, even if it may not be the end all or something that you really think that you want to devote your life to, try it. It might develop into something that you enjoy and develop some area of expertise, especially if you're one of those people that has an incredibly diverse skill set, right? I mean, I could have ended up
Yes.
running a computer mail order business. I could have ended up a used car salesman. If you're one of those people who have so many attributes that you could do just about anything, as we all know, that can make things more difficult. But to the new attorney, try it, give it a shot, and try and surround yourself with good people who treat you kindly.
I like that a lot. Kind people, not just people who have many more years of experience than you, because I've spoken to few younger attorneys and they're looking for the right mentor and they're soaking it up. But it's also that sort of that emotional support, because part of the journey is not just acquiring the knowledge, is also growing within, so that you ultimately can maintain that sense of joy, because you are going to carry a lot. People really have no idea what it takes to be an attorney. So great. This was terrific, and you'll be back. I'll have you back, and you may be a Broadway star by the time I get you back, but we'll have you back, Larry. your your journey really paints a picture of, I'd say, true grit, creativity. Thank you so much for being here today to share your, I would say, colorful journey with us today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and it was a whole lot of fun, and I'd love to come back and thank you for having me.
And our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. And to learn more about Larry and how to get a hold of him, click on his bio link below. And don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and follow us on all social media channels. I am Denisa Tova, the host. And until next week, stay curious and inspired.